Howdy, boys and girls, and welcome back to the Carla and Crappy Show. It is week 7 of the college football season, sort of a halfway point in the 2018 college football season. Therefore, it is also the week 7 of the Carla and Crappy Show, which makes it pretty appropriate that I'm Crappy and there's Carla. Don't mind me. The cats are running around the office, and I'm a mess.
And you're talking with your hands, and you're hitting microphones, and papers are flying all over the floor, and yeah, it's great. It's just your typical, typical taping night of, hey, but we're back in the evening, so cheers to that.
And there's beer.
There's beer.
Sweet beer. I am drinking a lovely pastry stout, Milton the Toaster, from Hitchhiker Brewing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm very pleased with it. It's an appropriate thing, and I'm hoping it is not stout weather yet. It was still 85 degrees here in Pittsburgh today. However, the weather is about to turn, and we're going to talk about that for one of these games. But I just to celebrate, I put on a fuzzy hat because I'm really stoked about this.
They are threatening that we're actually going to see fall this weekend. And I'm very excited about that. Like highs in the upper 60s, low 70s. That's fall in Nashville, and I will take it.
Okay, my birthday's Friday. We're actually going to go to we're spending the weekend in a cabin outside of Athens, the high university where we went to school.
Nice.
And they're like on Saturday night, the temperature could be down into the upper 30s, which I am so stoked about this. Kelly may not be quite as much. She's like, oh, I hope the cabin's heating system is nice. But
build a fire.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, we can do that too. But anyway, finally, after sweltering through a football game in Columbus on Saturday, we're going to have some fall weather, and I'm so stoked. And that's appropriate. The timing here. I thought we're finally going to get fall weather. Finally get football weather. So now that we're halfway through the football season, this is finally going to happen. And that is also an opportune moment to maybe take a look at and see if we have one thing that stands out from the first half of the 2018 season. So Carla, I'm gonna pose that question to you and let you take it first.
Okay. So I'm going to combine a look at the first half of the season with something that happened last week. My one thing is actually kind of one big thing. And
I'm sort of doing the same thing, actually.
And that is the Big 12 is entertaining as hell. More so than I think probably we gave credit for heading into the season. We kind of dismissed the Big 12 a little bit. There's a lot of turnover happening. But man, you've got a really good West Virginia team that's rocking and rolling. And I will go out on a limb. This is a hot take for somebody that is a Big 10 fangirl.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, Texas was the best football game so far this season on Saturday. It was the first time all year that I watched a football game. It was gripping up until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally the last play of the game. There was tension. There was, it was back and forth, and Texas, Texas did what Texas tends to do and let Oklahoma back in the game late. And, it was, as somebody that used to cover the Big 12, it was always in what way will Texas implode spectacularly this time? And you just kind of waited for it to happen. Yeah. And kudos to Tom Herman, kudos to that coaching staff. They held those kids together, and they came back and they won that football game. And that is such a huge, huge win for that program. But now you have a Big 12 that is kind of, it's going to sort itself out, but it's going to be entertaining as heck coming down the stretch when you've got a good West Virginia team. And I mean, who the heck knew that the game we'd all have circled on our calendars is West Virginia, Texas on November 3rd.
Sure.
All of a sudden, Oklahoma's still a great team. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma State's a little hit or miss. Baylor is surprisingly kind of in this, and that was another one of my words of caution here is that Texas, if you're really back, you beat Baylor this week. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is potentially a trap game for them, even though they have a bye. So the Big 12 is going to be wildly entertaining. Is it going to get them into the playoff? I don't know. I think they might beat each other up, but
is West Virginia the only team in that conference you think that's got a chance to get there? I obviously winning out, I think they would have to.
I think West Virginia has to win out for sure. I think I'm not sure the committee would ever be able to overlook Texas's loss to Maryland.
Yeah.
That's a big loss, and knowing how the committee has worked in past years. Now it was a week 1 loss, so I will give them that. If Texas runs the table, they might get in, depending on who their opponent is in the Big 12 title game. If they have to beat West Virginia twice, then by all means put them in the playoff, because that's a good West Virginia team. So Oklahoma now has that loss to Texas. That might count them out. Oklahoma State already has 2 losses on the year, so that's not going to, they're kind of already played themselves out. But they're competitive in every game that they're in. Like it's just really, really entertaining, and more so than I expected. And I'm actually like paying attention to what's happening in the Big 12. So I think that's my first big thing for the first half of the season.
Okay. Naturally, I'm going to take the opportunity for the halfway point to do a sort of State of the Union address of things, what's going on in Columbus, which and it's tempting to, especially if you're my father, it was tempting to look at the team's performance against Indiana last weekend. It's like, oh my God, it's terrible. My dad is ready to, torches and pitchforks and ready to run Graciano out of Columbus. And I told him, and it's like, it's okay.
That's Indiana.
It's Indiana. It's a good offense. There's no question we have young defensive backs. It's the team adjusted and improved during the game. After a very rough first half, Ohio State closed the game 21-6 in the second half. That's a nice way to do that. And Indiana's they just do that recently. They've given us fits. Going back to the 2012 season, the final score of that game, that might have been the tightest game that Ohio State played that entire year. The final score of that game was 52-49. Last year, and I mentioned this before, last year Ohio State opened the season in Bloomington and we're losing at halftime. So it's like it's what Indiana does. It's not a huge thing, and we finished the game well. The bigger thing is that I really like where Ohio State sits right now. Undefeated, obviously, very big deal. They will be favored the rest of the way. I think in each of their game, they've already kind of overcome the post big game letdown thing. Last year, that was beating Penn State in Columbus. Very next weekend was the game in Iowa.
Right.
We have 2 of those big games this year. I guess you could call Tulane a letdown because Ohio State didn't score 50. And then last weekend, was the potential for a letdown after the Penn State win. And it's like, well, okay. If you're comparing year to year, boy, Ohio State's really stepped up in the time that it got thumped at Iowa last November. The back end of the defense, yes, it is shaky. They are young, but they're going to get better with every game. And they're not really going to get I don't think they face a really big test, specifically the secondary, maybe not until the Michigan game. I think the team itself will be tested when we go to East Lansing in November, regardless of what Sparty has done or will do in the interim. That's going to be a tough game because it always is. The defense might be helped by getting Nick Bosa back sometime in November. You still don't know a definite thing about that, but it's a possibility. And the offense, which has been pretty good, that they're going to improve as well. I'm not ready to predict anything, but I like how this sets up, and so I'm excited for the next 6 games of the season, and for my Ohio State fandom, and we'll see how that goes. Before we hit our games that we're going to talk about, and we've got 3 doozies. We have 2 doozies and one that we're pretty much begging, I think, actually, if we're being honest. We're going to let AJ talk about what's going on the West Coast for his Pac-12 After Dark or mid-afternoon. I'm not sure what they're calling it this weekend. AJ, explain.
Hey, everybody. It's your old buddy AJ, and we're going to do yet another Pac-12 After Dark report. A lot of this, there's a bit of Mountain West, a bit of Pac-12. It's actually a very good week. Last week, not so great. There just wasn't. Last week was a really bad week in terms of Pac-12 football. Just did not play any after dark games. We're not going to talk about the one they did play. It's actually been an okay year, and it's coming out to be. You're not, by the way, Pac-12. You're not getting a team in the playoff. You're just not. Washington ain't making the playoff. So this is all for fun and games and no profit. Obviously not. We wouldn't profit off of this. But let's get into what really matters, and that's Saturday. By the way, 3:30 on Saturday, Washington plays Oregon. That is not an after dark game. That is very much a 12:30 game for both of those teams. That game is in Autzen. It's a home game for Oregon. For those of you who do not know the name of the stadium, that game's going to be fun. Just super fun. Jake Browning and Justin Herbert are great quarterbacks. I'm interested to see how Oregon plays with the Washington defensive line, although, we've been talking about how Washington doesn't, has this really great defense. They give up 24 to UCLA, y'all. So either Chip Kelly's starting to figure things out or something done went wrong. I'll go with the latter. And that's a kind of interesting thing, and I'm interested to see if there's anything that Oregon kind of picked up from that game that a more talented and put together team can kind of exploit. But just pointing this out, if Oregon wins this game, Pac-12 is not getting anybody into the playoff. They're just not. So if the Pac-12 really wants a team in the playoff, or at least wants a team to have a shot at the playoff, they need Washington to win and get in. The problem is Washington's single loss this season so far has been a not very good Auburn team, a dirty, rotten, no good Auburn team. So that's a problem for them. That's not to say that if you have a loss to a not very good team, you can't get into the playoffs and win the national title in 2014. But it certainly doesn't help your case, especially when there are very, very, very good teams from the conference. I don't think that if Georgia runs the table and their only loss is the SEC championship, that would potentially put them out. Same goes for Alabama. I mean, that's what happened last year. We got Alabama, Georgia in the title game. Nobody wants the SEC chance again, but these are the sorts of things. Washington doesn't get a ton of good looks on television. This is going to be one of them. So I expect Washington to come out and play. I hope Oregon keeps it tight, but I do think Washington wins the game. If we move on to proper Pac-12 after dark hours, it's Colorado and USC. Shrug. In case you didn't know, Colorado's 5-0. I want to say that again. Colorado is 5-0. They're ranked. They are the ranked team in this game. USC is not ranked. They head to the Coliseum to face USC. Let's not kid ourselves here. Colorado's 5-0 and ranked, but they have not played anybody. The best team they've played this year is UCLA, and UCLA is not good. They had a fairly easy schedule on the front end, so Colorado potentially wins this game. They go to 6-0, and they're bowl eligible. They do play a very fun. They do play very fun football, but they again even a bad USC team is better than the teams that they've played on the schedule. So I think this is where Colorado gets tripped up. I think this might be where USC gets their season back on track. It's in the Coliseum. I don't believe that USC necessarily has like a home crowd that just destroys other teams, but I think this is going to be a much tougher game for Colorado than they've pretty much faced all year. Let's get to the Mountain West though. Give me that sweet Mountain West. Same time, Wyoming, Fresno State. Fresno's 4-1, surprise, and they look awesome. Wyoming took Hawaii to the wire last week. They're pesky, even though they're 2-4. That said, Hawaii did not have Colt McDonald last week. Cole McDonald. Sorry, I said Colt McDonald. Cole McDonald last week. They didn't have him, though they did bring out somebody in his uniform wearing the play chart as a distraction quarterback. That's the sort of gamesmanship that we're up to. We're bringing out distraction quarterbacks and decoy quarterbacks. Wyoming's pesky. I think Fresno handles them, but that's a pesky game. And do not be surprised when you look at like the scoreboard in the second quarter and you see Wyoming within a touchdown. Don't be surprised there. That's where you turn the game on. It either happens and Wyoming takes the lead, or they start to build a lead, or Fresno State pulls away. That's what will happen in this game. And finally, Boise State, Nevada. Boise, what happened? You beat Oklahoma State. Everybody was on board. Murder Smurfs till the end. And then you laid an egg in what I like to refer to as the annual Boise brain fart game, where you forget your Boise State and you just nothing's working. Just nothing works. Brett Rippon had an absolutely trash game. Is he hurt? Nope, he's fine. He just had a really bad game last week, and they lost. So they need a game to get back on track. If they're going to take the Mountain West, as everybody expected them to this year, they need to get back on track. Nevada having a little bit of an upswing year. They're not leading the Mountain Division, but they're certainly making moves there. And they're kind of in the middle of the pack. They're not completely out of it. They're kind of in the middle of the pack. And if they pick up a win here against Boise State, they can get right back into that race. So it'll be an interesting game. Both teams are actually playing for something. This could have very well been like a Boise's just trying to continue winning to get to the championship and maybe make a run at the playoff. But yeah, this is a game to kind of get these two teams back on track. So stay up late, brew some coffee. Highly recommend a single origin of some sort. Get your French press out. This has been AJ, and stay up late with me on Saturday and watch football. Later.
Awesome, AJ. Thank you. We go from the West Coast to the Midwest. What is probably the most Midwestern of the Midwest? South Bend, Indiana. For this week's installment of Oh God, Would Somebody Just Beat Notre Dame Already? We have Pitt at number 5 Notre Dame. Pitt is unranked, by the way, if you hadn't caught that. At number 5 Notre Dame. Notre Dame is favored by 21 points. And I'm sure we'll get to the point where we're going to explaining why we're even thinking about this game. But Carla, I'll let you take it away.
I think you picked this game other than would somebody please beat Notre Dame already, just because you want to see if this Penn State fan will actually endorse a Pitt win.
That had not occurred to me, but that's a pretty entertaining aspect of this. Yes. So yeah, go ahead.
So breaking down this Pitt team. It doesn't require much breaking down, to be honest. I mean, they were blown out by UCF and Penn State. Yes. Wins over Georgia Tech and Syracuse, decent wins, but they were both really, really close games, and they were just flat out blown out in their losses. Pitt's offense relies on the run. You know, they're in the top 40 in the nation in rush offense. That's something to hang your hat on. And
that really made the difference in the game against Syracuse. I think settling on that part of the offense, was helpful.
But Pitt hasn't faced a defense like this Notre Dame defense. And at the beginning of the year, we talked that we weren't convinced that Notre Dame's offense was solid, but the defense was outstanding.
Yes.
The game is in South Bend. I really, my heart says go Pitt, and I can't believe I'm saying that. But the best thing that Pitt has going for it is the fact that James Conner is starting for the Steelers right now and having a heck of a season in the NFL. So kudos to you, James. That's an easy story to root for.
Yes.
But yeah, Pitt is not it to beat Notre Dame. Sorry.
We can cheer for James Conner over Le'Veon Bell. Guys, do yourself a favor if you haven't heard this or seen this before. Look up Pittsburgh Deb talking about Le'Veon Bell. This was an interview earlier in the NFL season on the ABC affiliate here in town, WTAE. It's priceless. It is absolutely priceless. You can't take it with you, Le'Veon. Okay. Honestly, the only reason that I considered this game, there's a little bit of familiarity here. I'm in media in Pittsburgh. So I can't. I'm sure I read stuff about the Panthers. I post stuff about the Panthers, and they played literally just down the road from where I'm sitting right now. Pitt is not a good football team this year. As I said, they kind of hit on something against Syracuse and a little more emphasis on the running game. Kenny Pickett's not a bad quarterback, but that seemed to be helpful, and it feels like it sort of made the difference against a pretty good Syracuse team in the game that they won last weekend. There's one reason we're talking about this game, and that is because of a curious habit that Pitt has, because it has not been a great team by any stretch of the imagination last few years, but it has this habit of winning one, sometimes two games per season that it has no business being competitive. Last year, there were two. I mean, Pitt beat Duke and Miami. The Miami game was really stunning. Miami was on a roll. I think they were top 10 at that point. And Pitt won that game handily. You might remember in 2016, Pitt beating Penn State, and then the best example, same season, best example of this, when they beat Clemson at Clemson,
right?
Which was that the birth of the term Clemsoning? Is that when did you come up with that earlier?
No, that was ahead of that. Clemson, even back when I was working. As
okay, I wasn't sure, but certainly is one of the finest examples of Clemson of all time. This is, if you look at Pitt's schedule, this is the logical time for the Panthers to do something stupid, like beating the number 5 team in the country on the road. And I would be amazed. I would absolutely love it. But it's not happening this week. Man, no matter how much I wanted, it's not. Notre Dame wins this one. Next up, we have number 2 Georgia at number 13 LSU. Not a night game at LSU, which is, I think, unfortunate for the Tigers. Georgia's favored by 7.5. What do you think?
This is the beginning of a brutal stretch for Georgia.
Yes.
I looked at the schedule here, and the next games, they're at LSU this week, and they're lucky they get a bye, and that's actually a nicely timed bye, because their next 3 games after that are home against Florida, at Kentucky, and home against Auburn. Eek.
Okay.
We're gonna find out what this Georgia team is all about. LSU is reeling after last week's kind of stunner in the swamp. They didn't get anything going on offense, and we talked about that in the show last week, was whether the Florida defense could do enough to baffle Joe Burrow and the LSU offense to be able to hang close enough in the game. The answer was yes, because here we are, Florida again, no offense, one trick play wins the football game. That seems to be the recipe for success for Florida, and until somebody figures out how to stop it, they're going to keep winning that way. But LSU needs a big win here. Here's the thing that I kept looking at when I was looking at I looked at all the numbers. Georgia's defense is substantially better than most of the defenses that LSU has faced this year. Heck, they're number 2 in scoring defense against, and Georgia's got a great offense. Although, LSU's got a decent defense too. So, so I think Jake Fromm and the offense is going to take a little bit to get going here. Here's the thing. If you're looking at the bigger picture, playoff wise, Georgia cannot afford to lose this football game at all.
Right.
If they have any hope at all of making the playoff, because with Notre Dame sitting at 5, Georgia has to be undefeated heading into the SEC title game to be able to make the argument that a 1-loss SEC team, for either them or Alabama, can get into the playoff, assuming that Ohio State and Clemson do what they're supposed to do. With Notre Dame sitting at number 5, they have to win this game. Because if they lose this game, then they're in trouble. They're going to need some help to get into the playoff. They're going to need somebody to beat Notre Dame already. Or Clemson.
We're trying here.
I know. Or Clemson to do something silly, which is also possible. They almost did against Syracuse. Clemson to do something silly, or your Buckeyes to do something silly, which I think is less likely than Clemson doing something silly. It's Georgia really, really, really needs to win this game. On paper, they are the better team, and the fact that this game is not at night I'm going to give Georgia the edge in this game, but this is going to be a fun one to watch. I think this is going to be closer than, I think LSU is going to hang with them. And I think it's going to be a really good game, but I think Georgia needs this win. I think Georgia is going to get it.
Okay. Just an aside that I think that I noticed as I was preparing for the show tonight, and this speaks, I think, a little bit to the perception of Georgia. Georgia, of course, is ranked number 2 AP poll at this point. I think in both in the coaches poll as well. And in both the AP and the coaches poll, an interesting thing that I saw, Alabama obviously gets the lion's share of the number 1 votes. In both of those polls, Ohio State and Clemson, sitting at 3 and 4, sitting below Georgia in the polls, are getting number 1 votes. And Georgia is not. Georgia gets none. A little thing maybe, but I think it kind of speaks to the perception, and certainly it speaks to what you mentioned about the necessity of Georgia having a really strong season, with Notre Dame sitting there and not really having any potentially big challenges for the rest of the year. You mentioned Georgia's brutal schedule, and it absolutely is. This is the second week of an absolutely brutal stretch. A month for LSU.
Yeah.
Last week at Florida, Georgia this week, Mississippi State and Alabama following weeks. And it's like, it makes me hyperventilate just thinking about that. And really, I think the only thing that LSU has going for it this weekend is that the Tigers are playing at home. Last weekend's struggles. Granted that was tough. I like what Joe Burrow has done there, and I would say that if I'm not an Ohio State fan, kind of looking after a guy that who's been with my program for a long time, he might. If you just kind of running them through like the NFL Combine quarterback drills, I think Joe Burrow is probably a better quarterback than Jake Fromm is, but Jake's sporting cast is much better, head and shoulders better. Georgia's better offensively than LSU. It gives up fewer yards and fewer points than do the Tigers. I might reconsider this pick if this was a night game, which seems kind of a silly thing to base this on. But I think, especially in this stadium, that makes a difference.
Yeah, it does.
In that this is an afternoon game, that it's in Baton Rouge still makes it kind of tight. But I think Georgia is the pick for this one. Finally, and I was talking about the weather before. Night game in Ann Arbor. It could be in the upper 30s by the time this game kicks off. Number 15, Wisconsin at number 12. Michigan's favored by 7.5. Other than needing a parka, Carla, what do you think about this one?
Gosh, this is a good matchup.
Yes.
And I'm still even, as I was looking up stuff for this game and putting things, and trying to make my decision, I think I'm going to talk my way into a decision as I'm going here.
Okay, we'll see.
I really don't know. Notre Dame beat Michigan in the gosh darn it, somebody beat Michigan or beat Notre Dame already. Problem that we're having. And we all kind of thought that, this is, maybe this is the beginning of the end for the Harbaugh era. We started thinking, what's going on in Ann Arbor. Michigan's run the table pretty and in a convincing fashion as well. Yes. But I went back and I looked, and so the teams that they've beaten since the Notre Dame loss are Western Michigan, SMU, a bad Nebraska team this year.
Yes.
Held on and got a win at a very tight game at Northwestern.
Barely.
Yeah, by 3. Yeah. And Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at Michigan's resume and I say, okay, they've done what they're supposed to do against teams that are not as good. We still haven't seen, this is the first time we've seen Michigan in a real test since the Notre Dame game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be really interesting to see if these offensive struggles have been fixed. The one thing that didn't need to be fixed, and the stats back it up, is Michigan's defense.
Right.
They are number 1 in total defense.
Yes.
And they are the top defense in the country going up against the top rusher in the country in Jonathan Taylor. This is strength on strength, which is why this game is really, really hard to pick.
I have the exact same thing written in my notes.
Yeah,
it's true. It's absolutely true.
It's, you know, and there. Here's the funny thing: Wisconsin is number 4 in rush offense. Excuse me, in the nation. You want to take any stabs as to who 1, 2, and 3 are? I just thought this was funny. Top 3 rush offenses in the country.
Rush offenses in the country. Army, Georgia Tech, Navy.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I got them right.
Really? You got them right. Georgia Tech is number 1. Navy's number 2. Army is number 3. Yeah.
Okay.
It's essentially everybody that runs the triple option.
Yes.
And then Wisconsin.
Which does not run the triple option.
Which does not run the triple option. They run a pretty standard offense, but when you've got Jonathan Taylor in your backfield, that's what you do.
And those large gentlemen up front.
Right, yeah, and a pretty formidable offensive line to play blocker. That's what makes this game really, really hard to pick. You know, I keep looking. You know, both of these teams have dominating wins over Nebraska this year. You go, so what? You know, and I hate the line on this game for sure. I'm still trying to make up my mind as to who wins this game. I think we have seen this Wisconsin team go up against a solid defense, even though they've had a relatively weak schedule. But that Iowa game, I think, might tell us more about this game than anything else, in that the Wisconsin offense was able to find a way to score against that really good Iowa defense in a tough environment on the road.
On the road, yeah.
Can they do that again in the big house? It's going to be a tougher task. It's a tougher defense that they're going up against. But all they have to do is score a couple of times. I am still not convinced that this Michigan offense is fixed. We don't know. We haven't seen them go up against a decent defense. And Wisconsin's defense is nothing to scoff at. I mean, they're decent. They're in the top 40 in the country in total defense. But Michigan's playing at home and it's a night game, and talking about an atmosphere. It's cold. It's the big house. It's October. Scotty.
Okay.
I've been told that that's the appropriate abbreviation is Scotty. Scotty wins it in the fourth quarter on a late something field goal.
Okay. Other than being really stoked about the weather for this game, and I can't underestimate that, because I really, really am. I hope it actually starts snowing. I hope there's snow flurries in this game, which is probably not likely, but whatever. Michigan is improved since, and I have not sat and watched since the Notre Dame game. But this is a better club than it was in week 1, and that's okay. We knew the defense was going to be good. As it turns out, it's really, really good. We expected Michigan's offense to be improved. That's not really the case, and I don't understand why that's happening. Shea Patterson shows up. We've talked a little bit about what it appears he's comfortable with and what's not. He doesn't appear to be comfortable as a pro-style quarterback. He seems to be more effective as he rolls out. And that doesn't necessarily mesh with what Jimmy wants to do with his offenses. So Michigan's been running the ball decently, which is the first time you've been able to say that in a traditional sense for a very long time. But what the result of this is Michigan being 81st in the country right now in passing offense, and I'm pretty sure that's not what they had in mind when they recruited Shea Patterson, got him to come to Ann Arbor. Wisconsin has, I think, a much worse loss on its record than Michigan's loss to Notre Dame. But it sort of looks, it feels like that's sort of an aberration. I can't explain it. I mean, BYU's not a bad football team. That's not a game that Wisconsin has any business losing at home. Since then, against probably better competition than Michigan has faced, the Badgers have figured out, that they haven't figured out. This is what they do. They run the ball They take deep shots, maybe opportunity passing attempts, but they just bury teams with the rushing game. It not necessarily high scoring, but it's ball control. It is just physical crushing, wear you down, and that part of the offense ranks second in the country at this point. So, yeah, that's serious. They know what they're doing. You mentioned this is a strength-on-strength matchup. Wisconsin's rush offense versus Michigan's defense, and the Michigan's defense, I think, it started out at a pretty good point and gets better every game. Against what kind of competition, that's debatable. But man, if Wisconsin gets a lead in this game, as I mentioned, even at night, the Big House isn't necessarily the kind of atmosphere that you think it is with 110,000 people. So you take the crowd out of it, and then you have this unbelievable ball control offense. Just keep that ball forever, shorten the clock, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Badgers win this one. Guys, you can watch the Carla and Crappy show for the duration of the college football season, which is half over, as we said, by searching Carla and Crappy on YouTube or Facebook. If you prefer to have Carla and Crappy inside your head, man, you'll find the podcast version at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn as well. As you'll see lots of links on your favorite social channels. If you like the show, please rate and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. Carla, any final thoughts?
Yeah, there are. This doesn't look on paper. It doesn't look like it's that stellar of a week. There's the games that we've talked about here, but there's some sneaky good ones further down. I'm looking in particular at West Virginia on the road in Ames against an Iowa State team that loves to play the role of spoiler. Yes. Don't sleep on that game.
They beat Oklahoma State last weekend?
Beat Oklahoma State, okay. Yeah. So this is an Iowa State team. Don't sleep on this game because if West Virginia is not ready on the road, they could that could be an upset special. Mm-hmm. Just like Indiana has your number, who has Penn State's number?
Besides
Ohio State, yes.
Who has Penn State's number?
That would be your Michigan State Spartans. Who tends to give the Penn State fits. So that game is in State College this weekend. Mm-hmm. And then the other one, Colorado at USC. Colorado is ranked. USC is not. But if you look at the line for this game, USC is actually favored. So we'll find out what this Colorado.
I didn't realize USC was favored. Okay.
Yeah, so give that one a look. That's a late game. So that's AJ's territory. So but yeah, 3 really sneaky good games down the schedule that obviously we didn't have time to talk about. But it could be an entertaining day on Saturday. I'll actually probably be at Florida at Vanderbilt.
Oh.
So
very nice. Yeah.
We'll
hopefully we'll have a full scouting report on the Gators and what we expect for them for the rest of the season. If for no other reason, then my nephew will be very happy because he's a freshman there and he lives with he can see the swamp from his dorm room. So he's been having fun so far. Anyway, college football is always fun, regardless of what the matchups are coming. As Carla pointed out, Carla, thank you very much.
Yep, thanks as always. And happy birthday.
Thank you. And thank you guys for watching. We will be back here next week with more fun from the college football universe. We'll talk to you then.